really need to get the Oldsmobile up and running again so that we can use it this summer. And the last thing that happened was that the flex plate, no, not the pressure plate and flywheel were hitting the bell housing. So we're gonna solve that with either this bell housing here that I bought, that is for a 168 teeth flywheel, or I also remember that I have another bell housing laying around that might work. So we'll see which we end up going with. I have made some ads looking for an automatic transmission, because not that I want an automatic transmission, but I know that when I inevitably sell this thing, it's gonna be easier to sell it with an automatic. So I thought I'm gonna pull the transmission, might as well do an automatic swap, but I haven't found a transmission. So we're still going 3-speed. So we're gonna look into that, remove the transmission. Also, after I ended last video, I realized that the car won't go back and forth. So for some reason, the pressure plate is engaged and the clutch disc is spinning. So we would have to remove the transmission either way. So I can't really understand what has happened, but we will look into that. So we're gonna fix that here today, and also I think we're gonna start trying to build our own fiberglass hood, because I can't bear myself to cut a hole in the one that we have. So that's the plan. But first off, we need to have it driving. So let's pull that transmission. The car up in jack stands, and I want to show you some things here. Here we have why it isn't engaging. So why is the pressure plate engaged? I don't know, but I mean, I took a flywheel from one parts shelf, a pressure plate from another place, and a friction disc from another place. So I don't know how this works together. Maybe this is too thick for our throwout bearing, and I have squeezed it together so that this doesn't engage, but we'll find that out. And also I wanted to show you how close we are to the teeth on the flywheel, and I also think that the pressure plate is hitting in this area up there. So yeah, we really need to remove this, and this thing leaks a lot, fortunately, but I don't know what kind of seals we need for this. But yeah, we're just gonna remove it and see if we can find any issues. Drive shaft's removed, all the bolts for the cross member is off. So it's basically just the bolts around the bell housing and the shift linkage. But I just wanted to show you here that we have some play here. So first I didn't think it was the throwout bearing that might be squeezed, but if we remove this rod, I mean, we have some play in this, but also it feels like the throwout bearing is pretty tight. Should be some play in it. So maybe all of this is builds too much, so that causes our issue, but we will know that in a few minutes. Shift linkage removed, and I also removed the bell housing bolts, and as you can see, we already have a gap. Most often the engine and trans isn't coming together by themselves by loosening the bolts, but obviously we had some pressure here, and now I can't spin the disc in here. So obviously something is too short in here, or I mean, this package must be thicker than our old package with flywheel and everything. So maybe we need a shorter throwout bearing, but we'll get to that. Now I'm gonna take this down. Got the transmission down, and it's really caked with dirt, so we need to clean this. But obviously I have one very clear issue here where it is hitting. Doesn't seem to be hitting in the top end of the bell housing. And I mean, we could grind this, wouldn't probably take that much. Here's teeth from flywheel, and here's the pressure plate. But also, it's really, really thin material. And my thinking when I went ahead and removed the bottom end is that I feel that here on the top half is where we have all the bolts. On this half, we don't have any. And obviously, everything gives some strength, but I felt that the strength going from the bolts rearward was enough. And also the automatic transmission doesn't have this originally, but also they have a thicker casting. So obviously this isn't perfect, but I was hoping that it would do, but it didn't. So I mean, I'm gonna consider if we should grind this, but I will probably just make a hole, and yeah, it won't feel that good, and I obviously don't want to break this later on. So yeah, we'll probably end up going with another bell housing, but we'll get to that. But then is the question of the throwout bearing or whatever it is. And I have checked on our old pressure plate, and from the ground to the springs, we have about 5 centimeters. And if I look on that, which is a little bit harder to measure since it's with the friction disc in between, it feels like it's about 5.5 to 6 centimeters, which is from this to this much difference. And I mean, that's basically how much the transmission slipped apart from the engine when I loosened the bolts. So it doesn't take much to give issues, obviously. So we have to do some thinking here and research. Is there different throwout bearings? I didn't think it was in this era of Chevys, or I mean GM, but maybe I have some other throwout bearing we can use. Otherwise we might have to buy one. Worst case scenario, we have to buy another clutch kit with the throwout bearing and pressure plate and everything, but I would really like to avoid that because it's so expensive buying it here in Sweden, and I don't have time to wait for one from Rock Auto. So yeah, we have to think about this a little bit, how we can solve it, but obviously we're gonna solve it somehow. So see what junk we have to fix this. Those who search for stuff will find something because here we have our original throwout bearing, and here we have a throwout bearing I had laying around. And I think this is exactly what we need to make this work. And this was sitting on the same as this transmission, but a 4-speed, a cast iron 4-speed transmission that I had laying around. So obviously it is the same, everything's gonna work like this. You have to clean up a little bit, but yeah, I think this is gonna work perfect. I think this is just the right amount of height difference we need, and it feels good enough that I can drive it and we don't have to wait for parts. So that's fantastic. So now we can go ahead, clean this transmission, decide which bell housing we're gonna go with, because the other one's a little bit of a question mark, but we'll get to that. So clean this and start putting everything together again. It took forever, but I have cleaned the transmission. It was the most caked on dirt I have ever encountered, but it has probably not been cleaned since 1966, so that's not too strange. But yeah, we're gonna start putting this together now, and here is the bell housing situation. There we have the one that we took off the car. There we have our new one, and this is one that I have been laying around for however long. It is in cast iron, and I felt that it had maybe a bit more space so that we can use it, but I realized that it is made for the old style starter bolt pattern, which they used up into the early 60s, and I don't have a starter like that. So I mean, we have a bell housing that's probably gonna work, so might as well put this back on the shelf. But yeah, that's how we're gonna roll with it. And if we look at this, we can see that if we look at this angle, and this is where we have issues with it hitting, we can see on this thing it takes a wider of a curve, so it creates more space in here. So I'm really certain that this thing is going to work. So yeah, put that thing onto the transmission with our shorter throwout bearing, and we should fix all the problems. So that's the plan. So I was thinking that you probably have seen somebody put in a transmission before or done it yourself. So I just went ahead and put everything back together, and it went up like butter. The clutch pedal feels a lot better. I have adjusted it to this setup, and it just feels better in general. And so hopefully now the rear wheel spin, and we don't have an issue with the pressure plate hitting the bell housing. So we'll see. That's a lot better. Sounds really cool. Even this small blower makes some blower noises. You're just gonna see that the transmission and everything worked out. Yeah. The pedal feels a lot better right now. So that's fantastic. That means that now we're at the point that we thought we were last Friday. So now we can put this down on the ground and finish up everything, put in radiator, get in some coolant, fixing the alternator, which will require some remodifying. But yeah, now we're on a good path to getting this thing drivable today. We've come a bit further here, radiators in, hoses are on. I find a new hose that fit really good with this thermostat housing. Heater core hoses are on. I remade the alternator bracket a little bit, so that takes some support here from the intake, since it didn't have that provision in the intake for the old style mounting. So it's basically done, and I thought we were all done, but I have fixed the throttle here, which I think came out really nice. But then I jumped in the car and realized the gas pedal was all at the floor, so I forgot to tension the wire when I measured everything here for my bracket. So we'll see if we can make this work, otherwise I have to remake this. I soldered the throttle. I could just move the bracket from there to the blower bolt there. And I realized that that was pretty loose, so I tightened all of them. So yeah, it works. Changed to a longer spring, and yeah, it seems to just be working. So we're gonna test that. But something we need to do is we have to fix this oil pressure gauge. I mean, here we have a gauge, and I just want the electrical sender. But I think it's weird that they make an intake manifold which doesn't accept a regular oil pressure sending unit. But yeah, that's what it is. So I would like to have a female to female connector here, so I can just add my oil pressure thing here, but I don't have that right now. So yeah, for now I just want to clean off everything here so we can try it and drive it out, fill it up with water and see how it runs. This feels really cool, but we're gonna fill it up with water and let it idle for a while, listen a little bit to it, and then I think I really can figure out something that should be hindering us from taking it from a test drive. Got some water in it, and it's been running here for a minute or two, and for now it seems to be working just fine. And it sounds a bit cooler now. I mean, as I said, this isn't a super rowdy engine by any means, but not only do we have a 350 instead of a 305, and we have everything in the engine better with newer piston rings and everything, we also have a camshaft that lets all of the 8 cylinders work as they should. But this sound is not the biggest improvement we have, and I'm not sure how much this goes through on camera, but it has a really nice blower sound to it, which I think is really cool. And I have never had a supercharged engine before, so it's gonna be really fun to test this thing. But I'm gonna let it idle here for a little while, and then I think we can take it for a test drive. We're gonna take a little bit for a test drive here, and I've driven it a little bit, and I found some issues or stuff we have to look at. One is it's pretty hard. You have to rev it up a little bit extra to be able to drive away without it bogging down. And I'm not sure if that is an accelerator pump thing or whatever. And as I talked about earlier, I have no experience with superchargers, and my father has no experience with superchargers. We know nothing about this, and the supercharger to this engine setup with this carb and this ignition and whatnot. So this was what I was trying to avoid by not putting in this engine, because I didn't want to have a testing period of how to learn this thing. But yeah, here we are, and it seems to be running good and everything, but wants to have a high idle, which ironically is the same problem as we have on the last engine, which is purely a coincidence. But yeah, I'm not sure if that is something to do with the supercharger and whatnot, something that can be adjusted, but we will have to look into that. But it's really annoying when it goes too fast on idle when you're cruising. I'm gonna let this car go by. I guess that's just some bugs that we can sort out, but it seems to be running good, and it at least does a one wheel peel in first gear without any problem now, which it wouldn't do with the 305. So now it feels like it's sticking the throttle and goes down very slowly. So I had to look at that, but yeah, seems to be running at least better than the 305, but that wasn't really much of an achievement. Yeah, if we get stuck at this point, it's really hard, so I'm not sure if that is an accelerator thing, but if we're above that certain RPM, it's not a problem. If you get stuck under it, you basically have to clutch, give it some throttle and start again. But there's some kinks that we can work out. But also now we have a Holley based carb. It's a quick fuel, and I have very little experience with these carbs. If this was an L-block, I can just go out, adjust the accelerator pump because I know how to do it. But I mean, I really have to learn these 4150 things, that's what they call them, based carbs. And yeah, obviously they have some more tuning abilities. But yeah, unfortunately we won't have much more time here today, so I guess we just have to go home again, and we can drive it more tomorrow because I'm really out of time. And yeah, see if we can take for a longer test drive tomorrow. From that car I bought with a straight six that was just gonna be a cruiser family hauler for the summer has turned into a race car as everything else. But I mean, it is pretty cool, and the supercharger noises is really awesome when you're hitting it. So yeah, this is where we're at right now. It is running and driving, and something I gotta say is I have never been a fan of these small superchargers. I have always think that they are a bit lesser of a being compared to a 671 or a bigger one. And I mean, you only have one carb instead of two and whatnot. So I have always looked down upon these, but now that I have a driven one, I think it's super cool. And obviously it has woken up this 350 to something much more. So yeah, I have completely changed my mind about these small blowers, and I'm really excited to be driving this thing over the summer, and hopefully it holds up if we're not bashing on it too much. And I mean, I had some ideas here if we should put in the 4-speed in it, because obviously the 3-speed isn't really a racing gearbox by any means. It's hard to do some fast shifts in it, and you really don't want to go from first to reverse when instead of second, which is pretty easy on these. So I mean, I would like to have a 4-speed, and as I said, I have a 4-speed, but I really didn't want to go through the effort right now. It has a really nice center console that I didn't want to mess with, and as I said, all my intentions was to sell this thing later in this year, but we'll see. If it becomes a keeper, then we can put a 4-speed in it, but for now it's gonna stay at 3-speed over the summer, and otherwise I will probably put an automatic in it in the fall to make it easier to sell. Is basically the only reason I would do it. But we're gonna drive 3-speed and a supercharger here over the summer. But that's all that we'll be doing here today. Tomorrow we are trying to do a mold, not a mold, but we're gonna try and make a fiberglass hood with this as a template. I really can't bear to cut a hole in this thing, ruin the trim and everything. Or I had an idea of making this into a cowl induction hood, but I think it's pretty hard to find a 66 Oldsmobile hood and trim and everything. So yeah, my plan is we're gonna do a really simple fiberglass hood and see how it turns out. But that's the tomorrow project, and obviously we're gonna do some small other improvements on the Oldsmobile. But yeah, I'm really excited for the future of the Oldsmobile. So I'll see you tomorrow and see what we can achieve then.